Right. So also, like I mentioned, very heavy on his address was, of course, that apology that really many Kenyans have reacted to. But before we get to that apology, Anthony, I'd like to hear your thoughts on some of the achievements that he said, look, this is what we've been able to achieve so far.
Yes, thank you. I think one of the key issues that he talked about was security. I think he gave a very big part of his speech time to highlight the challenges that we had in the previous years, in his first 5 years, tackling Al-Shabaab, the issue about Somalia. I think post-election, there were challenges to do with violence resulting from the two elections of August 8th and the ones of 2016. And I think he says the security forces, according to him, did quite a good job. I don't know, I could have expected him to also talk about the excesses of the security forces, because even as we speak security and the challenges that come with every election cycle, we also need to realize that under the Constitution, there are certain rights and freedoms. So that as people exercise those rights, you need to be able to secure private property. Other people go about their own businesses. But people who want to exercise dissent need to be allowed to do so. I'm looking at this under the context that security apparatus under the Constitution are subject to Parliament and the Constitution, and they are also subordinate to civilian authority. We looked at how they clamped down on dissent, especially after the Supreme Court's judgment and the call for IEBC to go. I thought that was very brutal, and there was a lot of arrogance, including up to the handling of the Miguna issue. I consider that to be part of the post-election phase. You have a Minister for Internal Security who wouldn't obey court orders. So when you talk about the rule of law and how we have made achievement in terms of crystallizing the gains in this constitution, I think he could have looked more introspectively in gaps that exist and how government agencies or individuals who fail to obey court orders feed into lawlessness. So when you talk lawlessness, you need to start from the top. I think he spoke about devolution. He underscored the fact that when you started, I think we had about 32 billion, which was allocated to counties. It went up to last year as far as 270 billion, and I think now he says about 300, over 327 billion now allocated to devolution. It's one of the key highlights that is shared across the divide. I think he spoke about assets that needs to be recovered, close to about
500 million.
Yes, in terms of assets. And I think he could have spent a little bit more on time on this when you're talking about EACC, DPP, and judiciary. During the transitional period, there is a big gap about properties belonging to counties. We don't have an inventory. And if you go and ask the transitional authority or the intergovernmental authority that took over after that, they will tell you that counties have stonewalled any attempts to try and take stock. So, for example, you don't know what kind of property, how many in terms of its worth, Nairobi County and other 46 counties own. I happen to be in the committee in Parliament on the implementation of the Constitution, and this is a key concern. It could run to billions of shillings in terms of assets that is in the hands of... so when you're talking corruption, I think they need to focus a little bit more on what's happening at the county level.
Okay, and even just before you comment on anything else, let's just spend some time on corruption. And of course, he mentioned that, there were these assets worth about 500 million that were recovered. But is that all that Kenyans needed to know? Are we yet to see any convictions of high-profile individuals who've been implicated in these cases? Because there are there.
There are no, Nini. I think the last time he was in Parliament, he came up with the list of shame. And in that entire list of shame, I don't know if there is one conviction. There was Charity Ngilu, there was PS, I mean, the CS was then in charge of transport, a number of people who are in other ministries. Half of them, if not all, have been excused by court because of a lapse. EACC wasn't properly constituted then, and they used that loophole to escape. I had him to be saying that the court should assist and the judiciary should assist to avoid giving frivolous orders. But then again, it is not the business of the judiciary to try and help government to do things if they do not go by the rule of law. Because you and I know that even when you are accused of something, the very Constitution talks about presumption of innocence.
Right.
So the courts will look at a number of things, and on the balance, it will say, should we or should we not issue an order of injunction? And then every judge has what you call the decisional independence. So if you're a judge, you'll be looking and saying, fine, the judiciary has adopted a policy where let's think carefully before we issue injunctions. But when it comes to it, I will apply my mind to a specific situation. And the Constitution grants me as a judge the decisional independence over and above the fact that we have the institutional independence. So yes, they ought to work together. And the judiciary shouldn't let people escape, but the very Constitution provides safeguards to individuals to avoid abuse and excesses of government.
All right. Fine. We'll take a short commercial break, but we're coming back to continue with our conversation. I'd also like to hear your thoughts on what you thought about the president's address yesterday. Tell me, what are some of the key highlights for you as a Kenyan? Hashtag, of course, is KTN News Center. We're coming back to continue with our conversation. Don't go away.